Welcome. My name is Ryan Hester. I'm a physical therapist here at the VA, ACC in Redlands, California. I teach the TENS class here, and likely you've done the class with me already, and you're watching this video just to answer any questions that you might have. Totally understandable if you didn't get it all the first time, and that's what this video is meant to do, is just refresh your memory on what we had done. You're going to get this piece of paper in the TENS pack. It has a lot of the information that I'm going to cover during this video, including on the back side, you'll see a schematic on how to set it up for larger body parts. And I will go on about this piece of paper now. And I just want to say thank you for your service, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you. It has the precautions, a legend and map of the TENS unit, and you'll notice, say for instance, number 3 here, that's the pulse rate. These are the buttons that control the pulse rate, and this is the pulse rate on these different settings. So that's a kind of a way to look at this piece of paper to make sense of the buttons and the parameters here. This piece of paper also mentions the type of batteries that are used. Nickel metal hydride batteries are used in this TENS device. Regular alkaline batteries will power the device, but these nickel metal hydride batteries are rechargeable and they work with the battery charger. So there are some precautions. Don't use this if you have a pacemaker or defibrillator. Don't use on your eyes or internally. Don't let other people operate the unit unless they've been trained on it. Don't use on the front of the neck or chest. Don't use on the head or face. Don't use while driving or operating machinery. Don't use in water or let it get wet. Don't use on infants or pets. Don't use if you have cancer unless you've been cleared by your physician. Don't use if you are pregnant. Don't use over areas that are numb or have open wounds. There are a couple of theories on how this device can be helpful for pain. This endorphin theory says that while using certain parameters, it's going to help the body to release hormones called endorphins. These are those parameters that promote that endorphin theory, and we set it up like this because it's known to be helpful for chronic pain, or pain that you've had for more than 3 months or so. This gate theory, it says it's going to help to block that pain signal from ever reaching the brain in the first place. These are the parameters that promote that gate theory, and we set it up like this because that's known to be helpful for acute pain, or pain that you've had for less than 3 months. Obviously there's some gray areas there regarding the time frame of your pain, but this is just a general idea on how to set it up for 2 different types of pain. And you'll notice the big difference here is the frequency or the pulse rate to promote this endorphin theory is quite a bit less than it is to promote the gate theory. These are the components that will come in the TENS bag. TENS unit, battery charger, wires. You'll get 2 bags of these wires. Pads or electrodes that stick to your skin, and a user's manual. So what you'll do is you'll take the wires, take them out of the bag, stretch them out, and then one of the ends of each of the wires looks like this. It's like a 90-degree black plug, and it's just going to plug right into the top of that terminal right here. And so I'll do the same with the other side here, just like that. And I have that wire stretched out and plugged in to the electrodes, and then these electrodes will stick to the skin. So both of these pads are plugged into the wire that's coming from this terminal here specifically, and so this red and black lead through the pads and skin and muscle will create a circuit between these 2 pads, and then vice versa for the other side. These 2 pads will communicate. If you want to use both channels, then you'll put all 4 pads on the skin. If you want to use one channel, then you'll just put 2 pads on the skin, and you'll just use either channel in that case. And then these dials up here, these dials control the intensity. This dial controls the intensity for this channel, and this dial controls the intensity for this channel. So both channels are independent of each other. You can think of them as channel 1 and channel 2. And control panel is right here under this door. You just pull it toward you and it will reveal all the buttons here. Power button is the big orange button. Press it 1 time and the power turns on. Hold the power button down for 3 seconds and the power turns off. I'll turn it back on. The mode button is right here. It says mode on it, and there's 9 modes total. I'll go through them real quick. You got constant 1, 2, and 3, burst 1, 2, and 3, and then modulated 1, 2, and 3. And so I'm gonna go back to the burst 2 mode here. Right there. And I had talked about this mode earlier here. I highlighted it, and so we're gonna set it up. We're gonna sort of customize and adjust the pulse rate and pulse width, and we're gonna match these parameters on this piece of paper here to promote that endorphin theory. So going back to the TENS unit here, the paper suggests a range for the pulse rate between 1 and 20 hertz. This is the pulse rate up here. Right now it says 100 hertz. We're gonna dial it down using this PR minus button. And I'm gonna hit it several times. And I'm gonna go to 20 hertz. So the range on the paper suggests 1 to 20 hertz for the pulse rate. I am going to 20 hertz. So I'm within the range there. This number up here is the pulse width in microseconds. It's adjusted by these arrows here. The paper suggests a range between 200 and 250 microseconds. And so I'm going to dial that PW plus up to 200. So the pulse rate, 20 hertz, pulse width, 200 microseconds. I'm within the range that the paper suggests on both parameters, and feel free to adjust those anywhere within those ranges, and set it up initially with this burst 2 mode with it somewhere within the ranges that the paper suggests, and give that a try. But I think it goes without saying that you're welcome to experiment with different modes, different pulse rate, different pulse width, and don't hesitate to really experiment to see what's most helpful for your pain, so long as it doesn't violate those precautions, right? Of course. So we recommend timed sessions between 30 and 60 minutes, up to 3 times per day, per body part, okay? And there is a blurb here that says that exact thing. Right underneath that box, it says use no more than an hour per use and no more than 3 times per day, okay? And that's per body part. So to set the timer, you press this button that has a clock symbol on it, and it's gonna increase the timer by 15 minutes every time you push it. So you got 15, 30, 45, 60. If you wanna do an hour session, just set it to 60, set everything up. You'll stick the pads on the skin around the painful area. And then this timer is gonna count down. Even right now, it's counting down. In a moment here, it'll say 59. It'll count all the way down to 0, and then the unit will turn off automatically. I mentioned the intensity earlier. So this dial controls the intensity for this channel, and then this dial, this channel, right? So as I dial this clockwise, you'll notice bars come on the screen just below the dial that I'm adjusting on that same side. And if we're going to use this TENS device on a somewhat large area where all 4 pads can fit without the pads touching, then I do suggest using both channels. And if it is set up on that both channels on one area of pain, then I suggest ramping up the intensity back and forth, right? A couple bars here and there, back and forth. And if you go high enough, and I think this goes without saying, the pads are already stuck to your skin at this point, right? You don't want to turn up the intensity and then stick the pads to the skin. So you'll stick the pads to the skin and then you start ramping up the intensity. If you go high enough with the intensity, the muscles will start to contract. If it's a light muscle contraction and it's comfortable, that's perfectly fine. But if it's a vigorous muscle contraction or if it's uncomfortable, then you'll dial it down, going counterclockwise and decreasing the intensity and the amount of bars on each side. The amount of bars on each side will be close. They don't have to match exactly 1 for 1, but they will be close. They could be 1 to 2 off, depending on the body part. But they don't have to match exactly 1 for 1. So this is a pretty typical setup. Again, I suggest setting it up with the Burst 2 mode and similar parameters that are within the ranges that the paper suggests. And then that will help you to get familiar with adjusting the different settings, different modes, and you will get more familiar with the TENS unit, generally speaking. Once you find the intensity that you like, that feels right, you can lock it at that current intensity by pressing the power button one more time, right? You'll see the LOC come on the screen there, and you won't be able to adjust the intensity up or down, right? And so if you see the LOC on the top right-hand corner of that display, then you're not going to be able to adjust the intensity. And so if you do see that and you're trying to adjust it, you will not be able to. And then you just press it one more time and it will unlock, and now I can again adjust the intensity. Now keep in mind, if the intensity is locked at 0 and you don't feel it, well, that's why. And so at that point you would just unlock it and then increase the intensity as needed. This schematic will be on the back of that same piece of paper I had talked about earlier. And my little note says here, page 27 in booklet shows orientations of pad placements for different body parts, starting with the neck. This orientation is typical in areas that all 4 pads can fit without them touching. And so I'm referring to this booklet here. But this setup is typical for areas where you can fit all 4 pads: low back, hip, knee, neck, shoulder. These are all areas that are somewhat large and you can fit all 4 pads without them touching. And you'll notice the setup here. Here's my TENS unit here, channel 1 and channel 2, and then the dials. You'll notice that I have one of the leads from channel 1 going here, in this case the red one. The other lead from channel 1 I have going here, in this case the black one. They're both coming from channel 1, so that red and black lead will communicate and create a circuit diagonally across that pane. From channel 2, I have one of the leads here, the other lead here. They're both coming from channel 2, so this circuit will be completed diagonally. So this allows us to get the power of both channels focused on one area. And you'll see the little asterisk, the little star in the center of the X there, and an arrow that says pain. So essentially you're going to surround the pane with the pads, cross the leads, set up the mode and time just how you want it, turn up the intensity. That's basically how you'll start the session and go from there. You can also separate these channels and treat 2 different body parts at the same time. So this channel can be stretched out and
put on the right shoulder, and then vice versa. You can separate the other side out and treat the left shoulder at the same time. That's just an example. You can stretch these channels apart and treat two different body parts at the same time. If the area of pain is small enough, you'll probably get away with one channel and just using two of the pads. But for larger areas, we do suggest that you use both channels and all four pads on that area, crossing the leads up so that you get the focus of the device, the power of the device into one location. These are the TENS pads here, and this is one pack of pads. I'm going to give you 3 packs of pads, each with 4 pads in them. Pads plug into the end of the lead, just like that, male, female. And they come on these plastic sheets. So when it comes time to use the device, you'll pull it off the plastic, stick it on the skin, set everything up, do the session, and when you're done, you'll take it off the skin, put it back on the plastic, put it back in the bag, and this is how you sort of preserve the pads. They last between 10 and 20 uses, but they do go bad, and once they stop sticking to the skin very well, then it can be uncomfortable when you turn up the intensity. So at that point, when it doesn't feel right anymore, you're gonna call this number here. And my little note says, new pads after first pack is done. So you'll call Prosthetics, they'll send a bulk amount to your house, and you'll get that shipment in before you run out of the pads I gave you, so long as you call them early enough. When it comes time to charge the batteries, you'll just take the batteries out of the TENS unit. You'll open that clear door up by pushing this tab on the bottom. Door kind of springs open, and you have these spring-loaded clips, and you just fold it down using the battery, locking it in there. And then you would do the same thing, negative on bottom on both sides, positive on top. And you lift the prongs up and just plug it in the outlet. If you plug it in overnight, the next day it'll be fully charged and ready to go for another 2-3 weeks before you need to charge it again. Okay, I'm gonna demonstrate that crossing pattern I talked about earlier. Still have the channels plugged in to the pads here, and I'm gonna put this I'm gonna put the pads around my biceps tendon. I have a little bit of a biceps tendinosis here on my left elbow, and I'm just gonna surround that painful tendon with the pads. In this case, I'm leaving the pads plugged in. I tried this a moment ago and I had a hard time plugging them in one-handed. So I'm reshooting it here, and you can kind of see where I'm going with this. One pad below the elbow here, one pad above the elbow, and I'm gonna cross them up, so this is why I put it on opposite sides. It doesn't matter red or black necessarily. It's arbitrary, right? So I have these 2 pads will communicate. These 2 pads will communicate. Okay. And so my painful area is right here. So I got the pain in the center, and turn it on. I'm on the burst 2 mode that we had gone over, and I'm just gonna ramp it up. Pretty quick to get a contraction over muscle like this, and you can even see my finger moving. It's causing that muscle to contract enough to flex my fingers. So that's definitely I'm gonna ramp it down, and so that feels therapeutic for me. I think that's a good intensity there. It still wants my ring finger to contract. So I'm gonna go down. That's a pretty good intensity level right there. So hope it's helpful. Thank you all for your service, and I hope this device is helpful for your pain. Again, experiment with all the different modes. See what's most helpful for you. Thank you.